Today we're doing a tutorial on how to cast. Now, the products that we're using today have been quite happily donated by Quantum Supplies, and the items we are using are the Mouldcraft Gp-Rtv 320 general purpose silicone mould base, and the actual resin itself is the Mouldcraft A2000L fast cast. So this is a two-part resin, so you'll get two of these bottles. So to pick up these items, there's going to be a link down in the description area. So you're also going to need today is some silicone release agent, and you're also going to need some little throwaway plastic bowls or dishes. Basically it's just something you can mix your silicone and your resin in later on. You're also going to need some little measuring pots for, well, measuring the actual resin and the silicone in. You're also going to need to pick yourself up some little items that you can use to actually cast, to actually make a mould of your item in. So today we're going to be using a old takeaway container and a container that used to hold cotton wool buds for cleaning your ears with. Now, as you can tell, there's 4 holes in the bottom, so we're also going to need a material to make a seal. And today we're going to be using some white plasticine that you can pick up off eBay for just over £1, £1.50, so very cheap. So yeah guys, now that we've got the majority of our equipment, we're going to need 2 more things, and the first thing is something to cast. Today we're using a little plinth with a little bit of scenery on top. I bought this ages ago, and all we're going to do is make a few casts. Now, the final piece of equipment that we're going to need is some electric scales. Now, the product that I got, I bought from my local town, and they were very cheap, just something like a tenner. So there you go guys. Now that we've got all the equipment, now we can crack on and start getting on with the tutorial and make some casts up. Okay then guys, now that we have all our equipment, what we need to concentrate on doing now is bringing a few items together to create the object we're going to, containers to actually make the mould of the plinth. So what we're going to do now is take our plasticine and flatten it the best we can with whatever we have at hand. Now, the reason we are using the plasticine and doing it like this is the plasticine is in fact our sealing agent. This is what's going to stop the silicone flowing through those 4 holes at the bottom of the cotton wool bud container. Now, periodically what you want to do is keep on bringing the container backwards and forwards, making sure that you have the right size plasticine to cover the entirety of the bottom of the container. Now, what you can see here is me using the silicone can to really push the cotton wool bud container into the plasticine. Now this is twofold. This is going to give us some excess, but it's also going to give us a visualization of where the actual container is going to sit. So when we put it into our takeaway container, we know where it's going to sit, where it's going to stand, how much room we've got. Now what we want to do is bring the cotton wool bud container back, use the silicone and really push. Now guys, this is where you want to bury the bottom of the cotton wool bud container into the plasticine and get quite a bit of excess, because what we're going to do now with that excess is to start flipping it back up and make a little bit of a wall to really encase the bottom of that container so that nothing's going to seep out. Now that we have everything we need to actually make a mould, what we need to do now is put said item, the plinth, into the bottom of this container and to centralize it up. There we go. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to take our silicone release agent, give it a nice shake, and blast the inside of the container and the item with the silicone. Basically what this is going to do is, when everything sets up, it's going to make it easier to remove the mold from the container. Now everything's ready to concentrate on mixing up our actual silicone itself. So bring your scales and your little throwaway bowl, and what we're going to do now is mix up the silicone. So make sure that you've got everything set to grams and everything centralized out. Now when mixing up the actual silicone itself, the most important thing that you want to try and keep your eye on is the mix ratio. As you can tell here, the mix ratio between the base and the catalyst is 100 to 2. So basically what this means is 100 grams of base for 2 grams of catalyst. Now I already know how much we need here because I've already done this before, and we're going to need 200 grams of the actual base itself and 4 grams of the actual catalyst. So for first timers, the best thing I can basically advise to you is to use water. Take water, pour it into the actual mold area on top of the actual plinth, measure up a nice area of water, pour this into your bowl, make a mark, and come back and you start pouring your mold base into the bowl. Make sure that it hits the mark, and what this will basically do is it will give you your first volume of base, but it will also give you a weight that you can mark down and come back to at later days and kind of give a little bit of shift to it. So here we go guys, this is me putting in 200 grams of base, and in a minute now what you're going to see is a large globule of base hit the actual container and push me over 200 to 211. Unless you want to be really precise, this is something that you don't really have to worry about. A little bit of fluctuation is absolutely fine. Now we're going to come back in with the catalyst. Like I said guys, it's 4 grams of catalyst. Now what you will actually end up seeing is me put 5 grams in. Once again guys, this is not something that you need to worry about. Everything kind of levels off nicely. Okay then guys, now that everything's ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go mix this up off screen and come back once I've got everything ready to show you. Okay then guys, I'll see you guys in a second. Okay guys, welcome back. As you can tell, I've been rather busy mixing up the silicone. As you can tell, I have something that kind of looks like it belongs in Hollywood, you know, something like Ghostbusters 2 or something. It's not exactly the most appetizing thing to look at, but nevertheless it is ready to do a particular job, which is make a mold. Now one of the key things to actually notice about this mix is I've added quite a few bubbles, and I've done this on purpose to try and kind of show you how to knock them out of the mix. So what you're going to do is just fold the silicone in on itself, kind of like baking. You want to fold it in, stretch the silicone, burst those bubbles, and just take your time, be nice and slow, and you know, mix it out. So one of the key things is you're not going to get rid of all the bubbles. you are still going to be left with 1 or 2, and to be honest, that's not something we really need to kind of concern ourselves in, because there's kind of like a 2-stage safety net that we're going to deploy for ourselves. Number 1 is the silicone we've already added to the actual mould itself. That's going to give you a bit of a barrier as well, so basically the bubbles aren't going to stick to the actual object. And you've also got the actual pouring of the silicone. So let's bring a container back in, let's adjust our item, our plinth, and then we can get to talking about pouring the mould. Now the technique that we're going to basically deploy is, all we want to do is pour a bead of silicone, and you want to do it from rather a high altitude. You want to be quite high when you pour this, and you want a nice thin bead. What this basically does is the surface area that the bubbles generally take up, all we're going to do is taper that down to a very thin bead, and basically the bubbles can't form on the thin bead that we are pouring, and they simply just burst. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to start pouring it here now, and we're going to do it very, very slowly. You want a very, very thin bead, and you want to stay in one place. You can't move your pouring around, you've got to stop in one place and pour it continually. What this basically does is, as it fills up the actual container, it just spreads out, fills up gradually, and the air which the silicone is pushing out of the actual container has chance to escape. So you're not pouring it directly on to where up details are, forming bubbles and that sort of stuff to basically get trapped. You're allowing all the air to escape, and what this will do is it will give you a far more reliable and attractive mould, and you won't have any of these nasty imperfections like bubbles and that sort of stuff forming in the actual mould itself. So we're getting to a point now where the container is getting rather full, and as soon as you basically pass the top of the item and the plinth is all fully covered up with silicone, you can be a little bit more relaxed in how you actually pour the silicone and basically just dump it, because there's no air that you're trying, everything's being covered up. All you're really doing is topping up the base of what will be your mould. So from that point on, air bubbles can be there all you want. If you are very conscious about your air bubbles, what you can actually do is take the silicone release agent, wherever you see your bubbles on the surface, just spray the silicone with the release agent, and what this will do is it will cut through, and basically the surface tension of the silicone will be a lot lower and the bubbles will just burst. So there we go, guys, that is pretty much the pouring of the mould. What we'll do now is we will put it to one side, let that set up, and I'll be back shortly with the next part of the tutorial. But just before I go, guys, there's kind of one thing I want to try and outline here. The curing time for this particular silicone is incredibly fast. So basically what I suggest you do is keep an eye on it every half an hour. Keep on coming back and double checking on it. So, okay then guys, see you in the next part. Okay then guys, welcome back. As you can tell, our mould is still drying, but to kind of progress with the tutorial, I'm going to deploy a little bit of TV magic and say here's one I made earlier. Now, as you can tell, it's very firm, very squishy, and this is what you're looking for when your mould is drying. So the first thing you want to do is remove it from whatever container you are using to create the mould with, and try to be careful. Once you've actually removed it, the next thing you want to do is to remove the actual item you are making a mould of. So it's very simple, just pop it out, and basically what it leaves you with is a perfectly moulded negative of what you've just cast. So the first thing you actually want to do before any resin gets mixed up, or you even think about resin, is to figure out the actual volume of liquid you're going to need first. And this is very simple to do. Now, for me personally, it's going to take me 120 milliliters, which is 4 of these small cups. All you basically do is fill them up with water, pour them into the actual mould itself, figure out how many you're going to need, and then share it by 2. Because you've got a part A and a part B to mix together to give you your liquid. So half whatever you're going to need. So I'm going to need 2 cups of A, 2 cups of B to fill my mould, and that will leave me with some waste as well. So whatever water you've poured into your mould, get rid of it now. Dry it out with a little bit of kitchen roll, and then put it to one side to air dry. Now we are ready to start casting and mixing up some resin. So the first thing you're going to need is a little plastic bowl and 2 of these small little cups, measuring cups that you've used. Now, like you've said, you've figured out what you're going to need, what your volume is, you share it by 2. So what you need to do now is to fill out the 2 different cups with the volumes needed from part A and part B. So for me personally, it was 4 cups, so that is 2 cups of A, 2 cups of B. So what we're doing now is we are just adding an extra layer of protection, and we're just going to give the inside of the mould another spray of silicone release agent. This is going to once again minimise on friction and let the resin hit everywhere and the air bubbles come out. So just cleaning my stirring stick there. You just want to mix up your resin because they will separate. You just need to rejig them back up, mix everything up again, activate everything. You want to gently rock them backwards and forwards. You don't want to shake them vigorously because that will create air bubbles, and once again, air bubbles equals imperfections when it comes to casting. So all I'm going to do now is I'm using part A, I believe here, part 1, and I'm just going to pour out 2 cups and pour it into the little white throwaway bowl. I'm going to take it all the way to the top, which is 30 milliliters, and add it to the bowl. Make sure that you get out as much as possible. Then we're going to come back in with our second dose, once again straight to the top, and then add it to the bowl. Now this resin cures very, very quick, so you don't want to mess about when you start pouring in your second part of the actual resin, the catalyst, shall we say. So in goes your first cup. Get out as much as possible. And the second one. Now, same again as with the RTV silicone rubber, you don't want to whip it up because it will generate bubbles, so you just want to give it a nice quick stir. You want to very much like green stuff, the epoxy putty, which the modelling scene basically uses to sculpt with. You want to mix both parts so that it becomes one unified colour. The same thing applies to the actual resin itself. You want to mix it so that you can't see two different components. You want one nice colour. And all you want to do then is very, very slowly pour the resin into the actual mould itself, keeping your eyes open for bubbles. If you pour it in nice and slow, bubbles shouldn't really be that much of a concern, because what this will do is if you pour it in one spot, it'll give the air time to escape, and you've got that barrier of the silicone release. As I said, guys, I would end up with a little bit of waste, as you can see. If you've been doing this for a while, you will end up with several small moulds for like bases or for miniatures. What you can basically do is reapply that to a different mould. That way you're not giving yourself a lot of waste. So what we need to do now, guys, is give this 30 minutes to an hour to actually fully cure up. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to zoom the camera onto the actual mould, and you can get to see just how fast this stuff sets up. Now, the first thing to note, guys, is I haven't tweaked the speed of the replay at all. This is all going to happen in real time, and what you will actually see is very, very quickly the resin go from this creamy liquid to a bone white hard resin. Now, like I said, it does happen incredibly fast. It's about 5 minutes, especially when your resin's rather new. It has a shelf life of about 6 months. So if you're doing these small little projects, the best bit of advice is to get some of these smaller tubes, these smaller tubs, work your way through that first volume, and then buy it as you need it. So here you go, guys. Very, very quickly you can see that it has pretty much cured itself. There's just a very, very small amount around the edges which is needing to cure, and at this particular moment in time, guys, it still needs the half an hour to finish off the kind of firing, the actual vulcanization of the resin, but you could quite easily demold this, put it to one side to leave it to finish off curing and reuse the mold for another cast. What this basically enables you to do is to create a chain of casts, so that you're not actually waiting around for the actual mold to be freed up from the previous cast, pure and simply because it cures so quick. Right, guys, this is pretty much the casting done. what we're going to do now is jump over and show you the finished product. Okay then guys, there you go. We have left the resin to set up now for half an hour. So the resin's now cold to the touch, and the next thing you will want to do is to demold it. So same as before guys, just pop it out carefully from the mold, and there you go, a perfect replica of the item we originally started out with. There's no pop marks, no air bubbles, it's absolutely spot on. So the next thing that you will probably want to start doing to this is to prepare it for the actual model to be put onto it. So you want to take a file to the base or some sandpaper to wash it in some warm soapy water to get rid of the release agent, and it's then ready to be painted up and have a model placed on it. So there you go guys, this is a tutorial on how to use the Mouldcraft kit from Quantum Supplies. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next video.